As you all know, we had a deadline week, very busy. We were in appropriations last night till 6:15, 6:30. So, but we have finished. We've got one more committee meeting today, and after that we'll move to floor work next week. My caucus is watching closely the shift that we are seeing in not needing certain qualifications for certain positions. We know that there's right now my understanding is that there are bills out there that remove either completely or substantially qualifications needed for mental health, the health department, I believe the deputy director at DOC, and also the chief information officer, who, as you all know, handles all the IT for all the state agencies. So we have a deep concern about loosening or eliminating qualifications for these very important positions. Also, we're watching closely on the formulas being used to combine agencies. I think a good example of one of these situations that we really need to spend time looking at and do a deep dive on is the possibility of combining mental health and the healthcare authority. Just because two agencies have the word health in them doesn't mean that it's necessarily a good fit to combine them. I've been told, and I have not verified it yet, but I know that there are concerns. If they're real concerns or if it's a real problem, I'm not sure yet, but there are concerns that if we start combining some of these agencies without really looking at what we're doing and the ramifications of doing that we could risk federal funding and federal grants. That is not something that you get a whole lot of lead time on. You are just deemed by the government to not qualify, and then the money just stops. So we need to be very, very careful with consolidation that we do not inadvertently trigger that kind of response. I think probably the last thing that we're monitoring very closely that heated up and we thought we were going to see a bill in JCAB yesterday is the first part of the plan the governor has for the Medicaid expansion and who's going to front load, pay the front load on the money if we go with the block grant proposal that the governor is suggesting. I have St. Anthony Hospital in my district. Integra South, I share with Senator Brooks. And just St. Anthony alone, if we go with the Senate Bill 1046 and the governor's plan, it's going to cost them $2.9 million that they're going to have to come up with.
That would be annually, not quarterly?
Annually. The problem is that, as you all know, the fiscal year for these hospitals is planned in advance. I mean, that's what you do in business. You plan out, invest, you get your finances in line, and you get your budget put together. They have done that, and they have got their 12 months planned out. The governor's plan will give them 60 days to come up with $75 million to pay the state share of the federal match for Medicaid expansion. It's not just St. Anthony's, that's all the hospitals. So we're deeply concerned that this plan is flawed in that way. Now, that being said, we'd like to see the final product. We want to see what the deal looks like. But what we're hearing is that part of the plan does include having the hospitals pay for that, and they've only got 60 days to come up with the money. So with that, I'll take some questions.
I guess the House Democrats held a availability and threw rocks at the shop proposal, and they were asked, they're supporting, 802. How would you fund it? And they didn't really go for a tax increase, but said it could be funded out of the $200 million in the Revenue Stabilization Fund, and possibly some of the funds in the Constitutional Rainy Day Fund. Mm-hmm. Is that something you guys would support? Too soon to say? Don't know.
Too soon to say, but I will tell you it makes sense to me, and we have discussed this in caucus, that we have $200 million in a brand new fund that we were told last year when we put it in, it was for savings. And my response to that is, well, what are we saving it for? This is a perfect example that we could use that money instead of putting it on the backs of these hospitals, because it's going to affect services and it's going to affect cost. So basically that's going to trickle down to the patients and the public. So rather than put this on the hospitals to basically have to pass it along, if they could even come up with the money, then let's take the 200 million we've got, just take 75 million of it and use that money for that. That makes more sense to us.
Has Thompson shared with you what the holdup was yesterday?
No, he hasn't.
What do you think the holdup was?
It sounds like it's a complicated process that they're coming to come up with, a plan, and there's a lot of people at the table, so it may just be the natural progression of trying to come up with a compromise.
Do you think that they failed to get buy-in from Republicans?
I don't know. I don't know. Though, you know, you should ask those questions to the House. They're always willing to talk about that stuff.
Is your caucus, I mean, if it comes down to it, if the SHOP proposal moves forward, would your caucus support that, or would they throw their support behind 802?
Well, first of all, we do support 802. You know, we have been looking at this issue for over 11 years, and now we've been looking at it for a year and a half, and it's like everybody's got a plan, no one's got a plan, somebody's got a plan, the governor's got a plan. And here we sit in session wanting to get this rectified, and the people are worn out, and I don't blame them. You know, so I support 802. I support getting it to the people and letting them vote.
Do you think voters, when they do get to vote, are going to be confused by their options for either straight up expansion through 802 or whatever the plan, how it might be presented, the Sooner Care 2.0 plan might be presented to them? Is that a concern for you?
I think when you've got multiple options, there's always a concern that there'll be some confusion. But I have faith that the people in Oklahoma, after 11 years, are familiar enough with this issue that they'll be able to sift through any misinformation and choose what's right for them. I think the state question is something that people are very much aware of. Maybe.
Attention, please. There's a quorum call for the Energy Committee.
I think there's been enough study and research over the last 11 years. I mean, it's been a topic that comes up frequently throughout the state, whether we're in session or not. And I think that you've seen an increase in action being taken by the public through the state question process. So I think that we'll see as an informed electorate as we've ever seen on a ballot issue.
I know part of the governor's plan, you know, in addition to the SHOP fees, they want to tap the TSET funding. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely oppose that. TSET is a shining example of something that actually works the way it was intended to work.
Even if they're not doing the corpus, just doing the incoming money?
It's not, why would we get into something that works as well as TSET? There's just no reason. The people of Oklahoma spoke years ago, and they were very clear what they wanted that money to be spent on.
I'm curious if you have any thoughts on Senator Pugh. I can't remember the bill number right now, but Senator Pugh is pushing a bill to do universal licensing, and the governor has endorsed that. And just curious if you have any thoughts or concerns about universal licensing?
I have both. Thoughts and concerns. So you all know my background. I worked as administrative law judge for 23 years before I ran for office, and I heard case after case after case for various state agencies regarding employees and licensing and those types of situations. Recently, I was on the committee that is working with Department of Labor that the governor named us. The governor put together to study licenses in the state of Oklahoma. We had numerous meetings over the interim and reviewed hundreds of licenses. And what we came up with was, I think, less than 10 that actually needed any sort of active retooling. because the system's working. And the reason we know that is because the people, the experts in their various fields came and spoke to us about the need for licensing. It's a public safety issue. It genuinely is a public safety issue on just about all of those licenses. If you were in the meeting yesterday when Senator Pugh presented his bill, I asked him, was this a recommendation of the committee? And he and I both knew the answer because we both sat on the committee, and it was not. So I think that it's a slippery slope. I think you need to always put public safety first. And universal licensing, it's not been presented to me on, okay, well, how would it really work? We just don't have specifics. I'm willing to look at it, but from what I know and based on my experience, you need to be very careful when you try to deregulate industries or occupations that have direct contact with the public.
What did you think about Daniel's bill on asking voters to cap pain and suffering at $350?
I think it's it's a bad bill. I think it's a bad bill. You have got let me put it this way. Those cases go before a judge and a jury. If a jury who hears all the evidence and all the testimony makes a determination on an amount that's fair for the victim or for the plaintiff who's been hurt, then why should we interfere arbitrarily with some number that applies across the board? So the cap's 350. If you were in an accident and you got a burned hand, and you get the maximum because it was the employer or the person that injured you was egregious in their behavior, then that's a good deal. But if you're in an accident and you lose a leg and you're 17 years old, you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. That's going to cost you more over the term of your lifespan than $350,000. So it's just an arbitrary cap that takes the jury out of the equation, takes the facts and each individual issue out of the equation, and it basically just says we're all the same, every lawsuit's the same, and this is the best you can do.
Why do you think Republicans are dead set on that $350,000?
Because I think it gives assurances to businesses that this is all they'll ever be liable for. When I've talked to them and they give me examples of states and how much money states have saved and businesses saved in other states by having these kind of caps, and it always goes back to, why would you take the discretion of a jury away from us? You know, if a jury, we don't hear all the evidence, we don't hear all the testimony, we don't know all the facts, but we just are going to say 350, that's it for everybody. I don't care what your case is about. The jury system works. Let the people decide. That's what the jury system is.
If it gets on the ballot, you think it'll pass?
I hope not. I think if people understand it, they won't vote for it. I think if they understand, because everybody's going to have a story. Everybody's going to know somebody who was in an accident or injured or oil field or something like that. Everybody's going to, and how much medical expenses are and how quickly they rise. How much permanent damage can cost a family over the life of an injured person. So I hope not. Yes.
I was curious about thoughts on two things. Representative Osborne's civil service reform bill is making some progress. Mm-hmm. And also a Senate committee yesterday passed 1890, Montgomery's bill about funding retirement.
Mm-hmm. That did pass, but we were no votes on that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. We can take Montgomery's first. If you all were in there, you probably heard some of the questions that were being asked, and then also Treasurer Daniels, Randy McDaniel. Thank you. Served with him. Sorry. You may have heard our questions, and we just didn't feel like we'd gotten quite enough information. It was going to pass, but we've got additional questions before we'll vote for it on the floor. So there wasn't, it's not very flashy, but we just had more questions. We weren't comfortable voting yes. And then regarding Representative Osborne, you know, I've been working on classified, unclassified language since my first year in the House. Representative Leslie Osborne, coincidentally, was tasked with running a bill over there, and I worked with her on that. She did most of the work, but came out, you're going to have to change the entire every statute. I mean, the whole, it's not just, you can't just change it here, remove unclassified or add classified back in. So it's a deep dive in a big project. It didn't clear the second year in the House when I was there. Representative Osborne and I have talked. We have carried a bill the last couple of years. Before that, it was Senator Lovelace. Before that was Senator Shorty. Before that, it was Senator Lovelace. So a lot of people have tried to do this. I absolutely believe that the merit system needs to be revamped. It needs to be looked at. There's a lot of things that we need to do, but I absolutely believe completely doing away with any sort of classification or classified employees is absolutely the wrong direction to go. I think you need a balance between the classified and unclassified. I don't mean a 50-50 split kind of balance. I think there are some positions that do need the additional protections of being classified.
I think it's like 70% now.
I think it's about there.
So 30%, 25%?
I can't give you a percentage, no. I think you've just got to take each position and look at it and see if it needs the additional safety of being a classified position, because there is a safety factor. There is a security factor with a classified position. That's part of why they're classified, is so that they can say the things they need to say and do the job they need to do. So I support Representative Osborne's work on this. I think he's doing a great job. I look forward to seeing the bill. I'm sure I'm not going to like all of it, but I'm hopeful that we can find some middle ground.
Thank you.
Thank you.